Pride in the newsroom. Tonight, in the France 24 debate, a cloak and dagger story with a tragic outcome. An Australian Israeli who had bragged about being a Mossad agent found dead in his cell. Until Australian broadcaster ABC blew the whistle, 34-year-old Ben Zeiger was simply known as Prisoner X, even to his own jailers. What a husband and father of a newborn baby was doing in a cell designed for the murderer of former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin is only the start of it. Mossad operations can sometimes draw condemnation from abroad, but today it's Israelis themselves who want answers over the death of one of their own citizens. Israelis who wonder if local press censorship of the case went too far for too long. We're not like other countries, replies Israel's prime minister, explaining how, for instance, gag orders are a matter of national security. What secrets, though, are best kept? When does national security trump civil liberties? While the U.S. grapples with the extrajudicial killings carried out by its drones, Israelis now discussing how much of a free rein you give to spy services. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the case of Prisoner X, and with us from Jerusalem, John Lyons. He's the Middle East correspondent for The Australian. This story, of course, making huge waves back home where you are. Thanks for being with us here in the debate. Also with us here in the studio, Gil Maheli, columnist from Yediot Aharonot, the newspaper, the Israeli newspaper that was the first actually to begin picking up on the story after the Australians, even before so, but under
in June 2010. Already.
That's right, even before so, but under the name Prisoner X. Also with us, French civil from the French civil liberties law firm Amélie Lefebvre of Bourdon. Thank you for being with us, and he's a member of the Paris, New York, and Israeli bar. Ron Sofer, thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Now, this story really gained steam internationally last week, but Australian officials first noticed something fishy when they saw a young man who kept changing his name and handing in passports filled with Iranian entry visas. Josh Vardy reports.
For decades, Prisoner X was one of Israel's most closely guarded secrets. Now, due to diligent investigation from an Australian media outlet, details surrounding the shadowy case have been brought to light. In June 2010, this Israeli website revealed that a man had been detained anonymously in solitary confinement in Ayalon prison, the most secure in the country. Nobody, not even his jailers, knew his identity or the reason why he was locked up. The government moved quickly to censor the article, saying it jeopardized defense security. The information was so sensitive, a court had to order a media blackout on the case. In 2 years, only one piece of information filtered out of Ayalon: that Prisoner X was dead, having allegedly hanged himself in his cell. That might have been the end of it, had Australian television channel ABC not released a documentary that named Prisoner X as Ben Zeiger, an Israeli-Australian spy for Mossad, Israel's secret service. The revelations hit Israel like a bombshell, with the results playing out at the highest level of Israeli government.
Do you confirm the fact that an Australian citizen killed himself inside the prison under an assumed identity, and the fact that he was imprisoned in the state of Israel was not published?
Since the Australian documentary, the stream of information around Prisoner X has been gathering pace, but every question has been answered with more questions. How was Israel able to keep the secret for so long? How was Prisoner X able to commit suicide in such a barren cell in such a high-security prison?
Modern technology applied in a cell like that almost totally precludes any possibility of someone like him, sanitised in that way, could hang themselves. I find it almost impossible to believe.
With the Australian government demanding answers, pressure's been building on Israel. The government says there will be a parliamentary inquiry, but the Prime Minister says not everything will be released into the public domain.
Overexposure of security and intelligence activities can harm and at times severely damage the security of this country. This is why, in each discussion, we should not take lightly the security interest of the State of Israel and the reality we live in.
Israeli media has become accustomed to censorship over security issues, but with the rights of prisoners and also fundamental press freedoms called into question by the Prisoner X case, previously obedient media has started to rebel. They say times have changed, and in an age of social media and an open internet, such censorship has become obsolete.
John Lyons, let me ask you, do you share the skepticism of that former Australian intelligence operative who was interviewed by ABC television saying that he doesn't really think that it's possible that he committed suicide?
Well, certainly, Francois, there are serious questions about that. There were 4 cameras, apparently, built into this cell. A question I've been asking Israeli officials through this last week is, were those cameras filming? They're special cameras, they're infrared cameras, they film at night, and they have microphones throughout around the side of that cell. As you said, it was designed for Israel's most notorious prisoner, Yigal Amir, who assassinated the former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. So it was a very small space. It certainly, I think there are questions. There are some still in the Israeli media who question the view that it was suicide. So that is one of the many questions, I think, that has arisen out of this week.
Another question we're getting, John Lyons, and there was fresh revelations this coming out this Wednesday from a German newspaper Der Spiegel about there being 2 other Australians at this shady company based in Milan that was doing a lot of trips to-ing and fro-ing to Iran. What's the connection between Iran, Milan, and Israel?
Well, that's material which was also canvassed back in 2010 by the Fairfax media in Australia, by the journalist Jason Katsoukis. And he actually did speak to Ben Ziegler at the time, who vehemently and aggressively denied that he was a spy and was working for Mossad. The connection is that this was allegedly a front company working out of Milan. It actually did have real operations. It did sell electronic equipment to Iran, but it was staffed by at least 2 of these Australians who were working for Mossad. And obviously the main focus of Ben Ziegler and apparently 1 or 2 of these other Australians has been Iran, which of course is for Israel the main game in terms of gathering intelligence. And it looks like these Australians were, dual Australian Israelis, were going from Milan into Iran, where they were transacting genuine business for this company. But obviously what they were doing there, more importantly, was trying to find out everything they could about Iran and its nuclear program, and, as spies do, trying to recruit Iranians to inform to them.
All right, trying to get Iranians to inform to them. Gil Mihaly, your thoughts on this?
Well, we should wait for the Ben Affleck film to know all about it. There are many, many issues here. First of all, we don't know exactly what was his role. It's very probable he was an agent of the Mossad. And if indeed he was part of this, how do you call it, front company, there are so many other ways that the Mossad could use it. For example, we know that in this covert war between the United States, Israel on the one side, and Iran on the other side, that's going on for many, many years. Part of the things that they do is to supply Iran with defected material, with things that doesn't work or things that will stop working. So not all the people that are involved in Mossad operations are collecting information or killing people or spying. Many do logistic. Some people just rent cars, others rent apartments, others work in companies that have a completely legal...
So there's different levels of operators.
So different level of operation. From what I read about him, I think he was part of a second circle or a third circle operation. He was not part of the hardcore. But anyway, even his name and his face could jeopardize operations, because people who knew him under another name in another job, suddenly they see him. So this is a problem. And to go very fast to the heart of the problem, Israel is at war with many countries, including with Iran, and the question is whether or not people that are in a position to put in jeopardize essential Israeli interest could Israel as a democracy.
But hang on a second. You say he was a second-level operative by what it seems.
I'm saying that I don't know, but what I'm reading is that probably it doesn't mean that he's not a good guy.
What was he doing? No, but what was he doing in that cell? That's the question. Then, if he was so unimportant,
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. What do you do when someone who is involved in a very, very sensitive operation do something like stealing money, raping a woman, or betraying his country? Can you do an open trial? Can you talk about? Can you even release his name and his photo? Because people who were involved with him in his under his covered identity and doing what he was supposed to be doing, they will say, "Oh, okay, so it's the Mossad." So it is very, very sensitive, and the question is, it's the oldest question, whether certain goals justify certain means. This is the only question here. And since I'm not a Puritan, I think that certain goals justify certain means. Since we don't know exactly what was the goal, and since we don't know exactly what were the means, we don't know how far, how bad was he jeopardizing Israeli security. We don't know that.
We don't know that, but your thoughts, Amélie Lefebvre, on this?
Well, I do hear when you say that the goals will justify the use of certain means, and certainly in the case of the fight against terrorism, it is true that we, law society in general, will see that human rights are more easily diminished, and as if the fight against terrorism will justify the use of certain means, as you said. But this is where we have to be particularly vigilant, and this is even more true when we are talking about somebody who was involved in secret services, and there is the reason of state and secret defense here to consider.
And I put this to Ron Sofer. There's something not right. On the one hand, he's being billed as somebody who wasn't that important, and on the other hand, he's in this cell which is meant for the killer of Israel's former prime minister.
Well, I think that this story has been taken all out of proportion. The Israeli judiciary is known for its independence. They go after prime ministers and presidents. The former president of Israel was sent to jail for 7 years. This man was apparently, from what we know, from what we read in the newspapers, was charged with a serious crime. He was represented by some of Israel's best lawyers. It was a judge.
What was he charged with?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Is it normal that we don't know what he was charged with?
But it would be normal if he was charged with treason or some kind of crime that involves state security. And the judge, it was, and this is important, it was an Israeli judge that issued the gag order. So the secrecy has been put to judicial review by an Israeli judge who decided that it was the fear of hurting Israeli security was legitimate and issued a gag order.
We're going to get back to the point of whether or not that gag order was justified. But again, the shroud of secrecy on the one hand. On the other hand, the fact that this guy talked in late 2009. You mentioned his name at the start, Ron Lyons. Australian journalist Jason Koutsoukis spoke several times over the telephone with Ben-Zvi. Here's how Koutsoukis characterized those conversations in an interview he granted with Australia's ABC.
I rang that number for the first time, I think, around December 8 or December 7, and I had a conversation with him. And that was the first of 3 or 4 conversations that we had. So he listened politely to to what I had to say, and it was, even to me, an outlandish story, what I was putting to him. And at the end of that, at the end of what I had to say, he responded and denied it as strenuously as he could possibly deny something like that.
So, John Lyons, where does this leave us?
Well, where it leaves us, something that hasn't been mentioned is it's correct that Israel has particular security concerns, which a country like Australia doesn't have. However, in Australia, there is a lot of anger about this case and the Dubai assassination case in 2000, where an Australian citizen or Australian passports have been used in Mossad operations. And the reason Australians are very concerned about this is that there's a sense that that's endangering Australians. When we now travel around the world, we travel through the Middle East in particular, which is a dangerous enough area anyway. All of this associated with an Australian means that now if you're travelling on an Australian passport, there's likely to be more suspicion. Australia actually expelled the Mossad station chief in 2010 because 4 Australian passports were illegally used by Mossad in that assassination in Dubai.
Australian authorities who warmed to Ziegler's trail, as you said, when he started delving into the fake passport trade. He changed his identity 4 times. And in the wake of the 2010 Dubai assassination of a Hamas gunrunner by Israeli agents who used phony identities and whose hit job was filmed thanks to hotel closed-circuit television cameras, at the time, the outrage came from foreign chancelleries, as you just mentioned, Ron Lyons, upon learning passports from their own countries had been usurped. By the way, one of those passports was French.
I want to repeat without any ambiguity, France condemns all executions.
It makes the French, or as Ron Lyons was saying, the Australians accessories to murder. If you involve, it gets messy once you start using people who are dual citizens for these operations.
No, it gets messy when you get caught. This is the whole thing. I'm sure that when they talk over the red line, they share, at least between Jerusalem and Canberra, I'm certain that they feel that the fact that there's an effective secret war against Iran means that there's no hot war, real war against Iran. The fact that thanks to people like Ben Ziegler and his colleagues and people from the CIA and people from the French services and British services, the Iranian deadline is still ahead of us and not behind us. So in a way, these people are saving an enormous number of lives, and
right, you're saying they're saving lives. I'm going to interrupt you because we have to take a quick break. We'll be right back, though. This is the France 24 debate.